I wanted to sort of start a little bit by what do I think is a social enterprise, because I think that that's probably quite useful. And they are mission-driven companies. They're companies where the mission is actually at the heart of what you do. It's what gives them their reason to be. It's what makes you good at what you do, and it gives you a competitive edge. And then the profits that you make out of that enterprise are reinvested either in the company or in the community that you're there to benefit. I think it's important to have a definition, because I think otherwise everything becomes it, and then the whole proposition becomes less strong. So the Divine Chocolate Company's mission is to improve the lives of cocoa farmers in West Africa by setting up a dynamic, successful, branded company in the UK chocolate market, and therefore putting farmers higher up the value chain. And that's no mean feat, because the chocolate market in Britain is enormous. It's £3.6 billion. The average person in Britain eats 16 kilograms of chocolate a year. So the job that I took up, so I'm not the same as what Tim was describing, is it's not my company. I don't own it. I don't have any shares in it. And if it got sold, I wouldn't be any richer from it. But it has been the job that I've taken on, is to establish a brand in the UK market that means the farmers actually have the share of something valuable. Because the value in chocolate is in the brands. And so it's in Mars, it's in Cadbury's, it's in a Crunchy Bar. It's not in the raw commodities that make the product. It's not in the cocoa or the sugar or the milk that go in to make it. And so that's the radical proposition that we're making. And so over the last 8 years, I've worked hard bringing together a partnership of organisations in order to establish Divine as a brand on the shelf in the UK market. And actually we've been surprisingly successful. We have just closed our financial year at the end of September. We turned over £10.5 million. We grew at 26% in the last year. We made more than £500,000 profit. Some important things also happened in the last year in terms of having worked in it for 8 years for me. And one of those was that we paid our first dividend to farmers. And so that I actually went to their AGM in July and we handed over a cheque for £50,000, which was a share of the profit. So they'd already had a guaranteed fair trade minimum price for the cocoa. They'd had a social premium of $150 a tonne, which they then invest in community projects like sinking water wells and building schools and doing medical clinics. They'd had we invest 2% of our turnover in a producer support and development scheme, which is to support the supply chain. So it's to support the cooperative and how it functions and educating farmers so that they'd have good agricultural practices. But also democracy costs lots of money. So if you want to run a democratic organisation in 1,200 villages with 45,000 members, that actually is both a huge organisational feat in a place which doesn't have telephones and communications. It's also an expensive process if you want them all to have a secret ballot where they can all vote for each of the people that are going to be on the national executive. So that 2% is 2% of our turnover, not 2% of our profit, that's invested in that. And then this year we finally paid off our accumulated deficits and all the money we borrowed to start up, and we've actually got into the position where we could distribute a dividend. And that was a fantastic place to be. The other important thing we've done this year, and I think shows that we're not risk adverse, is that we've set up in America. So we incorporated last September and we officially launched on Valentine's Day. And the launch was a fantastic event because we brought a farmer from Ghana who 10 years ago had never left her village, and she's now the highest up elected woman in crop cocoa. She's the General Secretary. And she came to Washington, D.C., and she did a briefing on Capitol Hill, which had researchers and things for senators at it. And she described the inequity of the chocolate system, of the trading system, and the inequity of being a cocoa farmer in an industry that's enormously valuable in America and in the rest of the world, but where the farmers don't actually get a fair share. And she got on the front page of the Washington Times, and so far the reception in America has been great. The biggest challenge has obviously been that the dollar has collapsed since we set up our business. And so we've turned over more than we had hoped, but our margins have been really, really damaged. And we're sort of having to look much faster than we wanted at manufacturing in America in order to protect ourselves from that exchange rate change. So that's sort of my introduction to Divine, and I'm very happy to answer questions on it. But I do hope that from that you've got the idea of a social enterprise as a profitable business that's trying to change the way trade is done. Thank you very much.